都来过。你是第一次吗？你是第一次，那我们要来那个总介绍。那其实我是来帮忙的而已，但是我是书店的那个常客，然后我也是也是蛮常来这边就是演讲的。好，那书店这里就是怎么讲，以东南亚为主嘛，然后那个书是只借不卖，只借不卖，然后就是你就是用那个full price 来去买一本书，然后之后如果你觉得你已经就是看完了，然后你觉得你想把这个书不想再收藏要放弃，还是让别人再看这本书的话，你就可以就是拿来书店，然后那个全额退费这样，然后是有这样的理念这样，然后书店也办一些关系，就是跟移工也有很密切的合作，就比方在北车都会有那个行动图书馆这样，然后每一年都会办那个移民文学奖这样，所以这是我们书店这个的大概的活动，当然也有办很多这个关于东南亚和非东南亚的那个主题的演讲希望就是说让台湾人能够触碰到不同的世界这样。所以东南亚是这一块是我们主要经营的哈。那今天其实蛮特别的，今天的讲座是Zikri Rahman，然后他会用英文演讲哈。那他就是来这里念书的哈，然后现在是在那个交通大学嘛哈，然后呢今天会跟我们分享他就是从吉隆坡到新竹的一些跨国界的一些那个经历跟反思跟感想哈。So 那我就简短的这个为了 Zikri 的那个方便哈，用英文简短的介绍一下。So tonight we'll be hearing from Zikri Rahman. He is from Selangor, right? And he's actually here to pursue graduate studies at the National Jiao Tong University. So his talk is entitled From Kuala Lumpur to Hsinchu, right? Actually, I've translated the title for you. 可以翻成说 my transcultural journey, right? Or roamings between cultures. So that's how I sort of translated the title for you. 然后他也是and he is also a translator, writer, right? And yeah, 所以他也是一个那个作家，独立的那个研究者还有翻译者这样。所以我就大概先啰嗦到这里哈。So I'll just stop here and 开始了。cool。
你可以讲一下，这本是传的，然后另外几本是可以派给大家的。
这个是可以派给大家的。
对。
那等一下大家要就是有兴趣的话，就拿一本回去，这小本的哈。This is his writings, right?
Yeah.
Right. And this is in Malay, right?
In Malay and English.
In Malay and English. Wow, bilingual. Wow. So 这是一个马来文跟这个英文的一个因为小说集吗？short story literature.
It's a project.
Literature mapping. 所以大家有兴趣的可以翻一下哈。Okay. So I'll just stop here and I'll just hand over the mic to Zikri. Thanks. Actually, you have the mic.
Hello. Yeah, is it working now, right?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Xiumin, for the introduction, and for our friends here. Yeah, thank you so much for coming today and during the weekend and all. So thank you for West from on behalf of Taiwan International Student Movement and Brilliant Times Bookstore for hosting us today. So I guess it's very intimate kind of session. So I guess it would be great if you can jump in if you have any question directly. We can be more informal in that sense. So maybe for today, after my previous discussion with Wes, like what he really wants me to do is actually to share my experience and the reason why I actually choose Taiwan as my postgraduate destination, like out of nowhere, like why suddenly Taiwan? Because usually people from different races, ethnicity in Malaysia is going to choose Taiwan, but for a Malay to be in Taiwan, it might spark something of which we can actually talk more later. So thank you, Sumi, for actually translating the idea of from Hsinchu to from Kuala Lumpur to Hsinchu. But then I actually added a little bit more of my own understanding of the experience. So we are nowhere, and it's wow, because it's actually from my friend's poem anthology. He's a friend of mine from Indonesia, Mikael Johani. So he actually have a poem anthology entitled "We Are Nowhere and It's Wow." So for me, it's actually capture my own position right now. Like, where am I right now? Like, are we achieving something? Where are we? So, but actually, the experience is wow for me. Like, it's very enlightening, like very euphoric for me to be and to have this kind of experience. So, without any further ado, because I did mention about my previous discussion with Wes about the reason why I choose Taiwan. So 2015 is the first time that I was here, like the first time that I was having a traveling session for 3 weeks actually in East Asia, like traveling from China, Hong Kong, and then finally to Taiwan. And that's my first time actually like came over here, and I felt like, oh, this place is quite interesting. The weather is almost the same like Malaysia, and the people are quite warm, and also it might be interesting for me if I can actually pursue my study here. And also after that, I actually got to know more about the people in the Cultural Studies Institute in my department now in National Chiao Tung University, especially through the different books that they actually publish. So from there, I think like, oh, maybe Cultural Studies Institute in National Chiao Tung can actually provide me with more exposure of my own project. So hence the reason why I actually choose Taiwan for that particular reason. But then with my own reading, with my own limited reading or exposure of Taiwan, I'm particularly interested to know more about the historical condition, because as we know, like what happens after the Cold War actually is not necessarily just happen in the East Asia, but throughout Southeast Asia as well. So for me, it might be something that we can learn from each other in that particular sense. And then with its complex relationship with China right now, in terms of how China looking at Taiwan and how Taiwan looking at China. So there might be something that I want to know more. And then of course with my ongoing friendship with several friends that I met along the way. And of course the development of Sunflower Movement. Sunflower Movement actually is a very interesting trajectory, interesting phenomena that happens, of which I actually follow quite closely as well, because of my interest in social movement, how people actually develop their own social movement. So in that sense, because as much as I actually involved with social movement in Malaysia through different projects that I'm working on, but it's like the Malay in Malaysia, because I'm ethnically Malay, so my ideas about social movement have always been influenced or conceptualized by what happened in Indonesia, because of language intimacy and also cultural intimacy. Like we both share the same language, we share, maybe in a way we share the same kind of sentiment or way of thinking, or the epistemology of way of thinking. But then I'm looking at how is it possible for me to understand the Chinese social movement, the Malaysian Chinese social movement, because this is like a, how to say, like a general oversimplification or generalization. For example, like, oh, maybe because they're going to conceptualize the social movement in Malaysia in the mode of the social movement in Taiwan or Hong Kong, or even to a certain extent the China mainland. But how can I, as a participant, someone who actually like really engaged with social movement, being able to understand the complexities of development in social movement in my own home country, in Malaysia? Because our imagination of the society might be different. For sure, it's going to affect the imagination of the social movement in Malaysia as well, because we speak different languages. For me, it's not really a problem to speak different languages, but what kind of solidarity networking or solidarity, what we call sentiment, are there that we can share across different languages, different races? Hence the reason why I am here actually. I just want to know more on how the people of different races actually conceptualize their own development of social movement. So yeah, moving forward from there. Yeah, so I actually I didn't actually use my slide just now. So actually I'm already answering why Taiwan and why not, the historical social context and my own inquisitiveness about its social cultural movement in Taiwan and both in Malaysia. But then I actually mentioned a lot about the idea of collectivism because for most of my practices I always emphasize on working together as a collective in order to collaborate, to work together. It's actually become parts of my, or the essence of my practices. So from here, I actually observe different kinds of social movement phenomena through its cultural and languages perspective. So maybe here tonight, I'm going to talk about my 3 different projects. So the first one is Literacity, is a cultural and literature mapping of Kuala Lumpur, and the second one is Buku Jalanan, my first project with my friends back in Malaysia, and the third one, Stranger Cooperation, is a project that we developed together in Taiwan with my friends in Hsinchu from NCTU. Yeah, so maybe I'm going to talk more about it in the next slides. Yeah, so in order for me to give some overview or brief introduction, so for my first project, this is actually a project that I did together with 2 of my friends, a writer and publisher in Malaysia, Mocha Mocha Ing. The name is one is Ridwan Saidi and Nurul Aizam. So we are working together in reimagining the history and also the development of Kuala Lumpur, but through literature, because as we know, Kuala Lumpur is a post-colonial city. It actually being influenced by how the mining activities has been done there before, and also how the British actually use it as the administrative capital. So in order for us to understand the city, is not merely through the history or even through the perspective of development per se, but it is important for us to go to the humanistic side, which I found it might be there in literature, because for example, in one of the one of the essay and one of the literature books that I actually came through, because I'm actually focusing on the literature from 1970s until now. So during the 1970s, in the contemporary discussion, we don't talk much about the issues of environment, but through literature, they actually talk about the issues of literature, about the question of how can we actually imagine the development of the city. So for me, there is something about literature that cannot be captured by the ideas of economic development or developmentalism that we have now. So yeah, from there, of which we are still expanding our bibliography. As in for now, we have almost more than 100 literature components, like from short stories, novels, poems, and drama script. So we are actually documenting the whole spectrum of literature production. But why? Is there any particular reason why we are doing it? So for us, how is it possible for us to build the city with words? Is it possible for us to understand certain part of the city by using literature components? How the people's sentiments are being infused by space, for example, because in Malaysia it's quite normal, or is part of our normal phenomena to have people to speak different languages in the city. Whether you understand it or not is a different things altogether. But you can actually survive by just understand one languages. So that's one of the interesting things about the city. And of course, because of the divide and rule administrative tools by the British before, so it has been specialized according to different races, of which I'm going to show later as well. So this is one of the ideas that actually moved us to come up with this project. So yeah, so by looking at the ideas of literature, we are looking at several aspects of why certain literature are being included in our project. So the first one is the textual and literary aesthetics, of which we are going to look at on how space was being reimagined through words, for example. And then the second one is the discourse. How do the people imagine themselves? How does the relation of history and development comes about to the people? So I guess this is some of the discourse that is very important, especially in Malaysian context. And of course, the last one is the authorships. Like, where are they coming from, the writers? Are they actually from the rural area, or are they actually from the urban area? Because most of the writers, especially the Malay literature, they are actually from the rural area. So you can see the development of rural literature to urban literature. So how they actually imagine as the rural literatures, or maybe the urban, the Kuala Lumpur as a place where full of sin, full of problems, so they don't really like the city. But then afterward, you can see the development where the writers actually comes to know that, oh, it's not that bad actually to live in the city. So you can see the different conception of literature and its ideas of development through literature. So yeah, I just want to show you, in the this one, so it's actually from a book where here I just want to show how the so here it's actually like a Malay area of the city, the Chinese area, and the Indian area of the city. So this is how the city was being specialized, and it was being captured through literature. So I found it very important. And also moving forwards, because the ideas is always the mapping process. So as we can understand, the mapping process is something that's not going to finish. It's always a process. Like, we did a mapping because it wasn't there, and we have to continue our process. That's the idea of mapping. So so when we did the mapping, we're actually going to look at the multilingualism of literary space. When I mentioned about the community, when they actually speak with different languages, how do they actually develop their own slang? How do they actually develop their own patois? So this is the idea that I want to elaborate more, that we want to elaborate more through this project. And also the contested production of literary representation is also because of the specialized city, racially specialized city, where we can actually see it being divided to different race area. But then of course it's now getting more cosmopolitan in that sense, where it's all mingling, but still they have their own cultural identity intact in that sense. And then the last one is the mutating literary ecologies, because as you can see in the 1895, Kuala Lumpur is just over here, but then now it's getting bigger and bigger. So of course, how is it being included in the process of literature? For example, maybe this is just what we call a village before that, but now it's all being developed, being urbanized. Are they actually being captured in our literature production, for example? Because there's a lot of squatters area in Kuala Lumpur itself. So how does it being captured in literature? So I found it is very important for us to see the development through literature, because it shows a more humanistic side of the development, I have to say. Yeah.
The south and the north and south until where?
North, as in for now, it's only 1974.
No,
so
this map only.
This one is Sungai Besi.
Sungai Besi.
And that one is Batu Cave area, right? Yeah, Batu Cave.
Oh, Batu Cave.
Yeah, Kampung Gombak area lah, Gombak area.
The west is until.
This one is Penchala, is now modern day Damansara. Modern day, it's still modern.
It's still modern. Yeah, east.
This one is Cheras area, if I'm mistaken. Cheras area. Yeah, Taman Mida Ampang area lah.
Ampang.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, so. But now you know that because right now Najib, before he actually become our former prime minister, so he said that he wants to develop 60-kilometer radius KL Greater City Plan. So it means that even until like my hometown right now in Sungai Buloh is being included as Kuala Lumpur. So it's a continuous process of mapping that we're going to do through our literature mapping project. So yeah.
So this core is Daring Street.
Sorry, which one?
Core, the central.
The central is actually the the convergence of two different rivers, Sungai Gombak and Sungai Klang. The Gombak River and Klang River. That's the the starting point of Kuala Lumpur historically, because that's where the mining activities happened the first time. But of course, it's always been contested as well, because there is the British ideas of the formation of the city. But what goes beyond that? Because, for example, around the area, if we're going to look at some of the literature that we actually documented, that there are a lot of Malay village around the area, but under the British mapping system, the Malay village are not being considered as a structure or as a village, so they won't come into the mapping process. So you can see how the process of mapping itself is very much political in that sense. Yeah, moving forwards from there, like
Sorry.
yeah, sorry, yeah.
Can you go back to the
Sure.
You were saying that the different spaces for the different ethnic groups, right, were represented in the literature.
Yes.
Do you have any examples to show exactly how the different spaces were represented literary in a literary sense? Yeah.
I guess for example, like that's the thing, because I don't really focus on this, but then it's a good question that how is it being represented? For example, in some of the Malay literature, if they're talking about the Chinatown or Brickfield, they always have that generalization, as it this is like a prostitution area. So it's actually being captured in that particular lenses. So for the Chinese, when they actually see the Jalan Tunku Rahman, is where the Malay area. So they're going to see it as this one is all the Malay area. But then because we actually have a limitation and of getting to understand Chinese and Indian Tamil literature. So as in for now, the project is only focusing on Malay and English. But because I'm already here now, so I'm thinking of actually interviewing some of the Malaysian writers who are actually based in Taiwan. So this is what I'm currently been doing, and I did several interviews just to get the overview of the Malaysian Chinese literature of Kuala Lumpur. But then coming back to your question about how is it being represented, it's actually one of it is actually by focusing on the space, that where are they coming from. Like for example, in the previously, like in the Chinese area, you can see how, like I mentioned earlier on about the Malay writers, when they go there, they will say that this is where we're going to play gambling activities or to drink and all, in one of the Samad Ismail literature. So this is how he actually conceptualized the space. But then again, that's where the politics comes in. Maybe in some of the Malay literature, they don't really talk much about the different race space in the city. And for me, my early understanding of the situation is that they don't really mingle with each other. What I mean is that, but it means that they see the space as a foreign space. This is not our Kuala Lumpur. This is not our part of Kuala Lumpur. So it's not really being captured as in total, but within the fragment they have certain conceptualization of the space. But like I mentioned earlier, it tends to be more on the generalization, and so this space is just about like gambling or prostitution, the black area of the town. Yeah. So this is the second project that I did, and it's actually one of the earliest project, because this is something that I did during my undergraduate years in 2011, like October 2011. So when we first actually conceptualized or come up with the ideas of doing Buku Jalanan. So Buku Jalanan in English means street books. So the ideas is actually when I actually came across through a video on YouTube about there's people who actually like going around the park with a bicycle and a library at the back. So it's like, this is something that we can do. Like, is there any particular thing that we can actually do? Like, how can we actually do something together with our friends? So that's how we actually come up with the idea. But then, just to like share certain things, because even until now I can't really answer like what is exactly is Buku Jalanan, because from time to time, according to different places, different groups of people with different engagement with the society, Buku Jalanan tend to be autonomously developed by themselves. Like, is it just a library, or is it becoming a literary circle? Is it becoming like a political group? So this is something that keeps on coming up from the practices from 2011 until now, because the first one is in Shah Alam, where my former university is, in UiTM, it's Amara University of Technology. So yeah, and maybe I can actually play the video so that we can actually have more idea about what exactly it is. Yeah.
Next tab. Oh, full screen.
Buku Jalanan merupakan satu perpustakaan dan juga satu gerakan literasi kebudayaan yang berakar kepada komuniti setempat. Buku Jalanan secara kasarnya beroperasi sebagai sebuah pustaka yang normal, tetapi kami melihat kepada potensi ruang awam itu sendiri, di mana kita boleh melihat bagaimana proses dialog dan proses wacana itu berlaku secara langsung, di mana kebanyakan aktiviti berdasarkan 4 prinsip itu: books, arts, culture dan activism. Tapi apa yang membezakan Buku Jalanan dengan perpustakaan adalah di mana kita melihat dan kita meraihkan semua jenis bahan bacaan dan semua jenis bacaan apa sekalipun. Jadi kami akan didiskusikan setiap minggu tentang apa yang sudah kami baca. Dan berbalik kepada arts dan juga culture tadi, ini satu perkara yang menggauli kepada buku itu sendiri. Jadi ia membentuk satu ekosistem di mana secara tidak langsung kita memperkayakan lagi pengalaman membaca itu terhadap proses pembudayaan. Dan akhir sekali adalah aktivisme, kerana asas Buku Jalanan itu sendiri adalah satu gerakan kebudayaan, gerakan literasi, dan kami melihat kepada potensi itu, di mana aktivisme kami adalah aktivisme pendidikan. Buku Jalanan melihat kepada potensi perpustakaan di mana dia digerakkan oleh komuniti. Jadi kami cuba untuk mengurangkan birokrasi. Jadi peminjaman itu seringkali berlaku atas dasar saling percaya, di mana kami menggalakkan komuniti untuk saling berkongsi dan melihat kepada kemungkinan bagaimana proses alternatif ekonomi itu boleh berlaku. Kami terlibat dengan beberapa aktiviti, contoh yang paling aktif adalah idea raya, di mana kami mengumpulkan 7 buah kolektif untuk bersama-sama menggerakkan satu festival idea yang digerakkan secara bersama-sama, yang merangkumi teman-teman masyarakat di seluruh Asia Tenggara. Saya melihat kepada gerakan Buku Jalanan ini sendiri sebagai satu taktik, di mana kita melihat kepada bagaimana masyarakat secara langsung dapat mengintervensi ruang awam itu sendiri dan mengisi ruang-ruang awam itu dengan proses kebudayaan mereka sendiri. Dan secara tidak langsung ia berpaling dan beranjak kepada proses mengeluarkan ilmu pengetahuan sendiri, di mana kita boleh melihat masyarakat pelbagai kelas dapat duduk bersama untuk menanggapi persoalan bagaimana kita melihat sesuatu benda. Dan secara tidak langsung Buku Jalanan itu sendiri membuka satu ruang utopia yang dapat kita gambarkan secara kolektif. Demokrasi yang bagaimana yang mahu kita jalankan pada hari ini contohnya.
Buku Jalanan, bersatulah kita, bersemangat wajah. Kami budak Buku Jalanan, punya cita-cita dan juga impian. Kami budak Buku Jalanan, bersatulah kita, bersemangat wajah.
So yeah, sorry. Hello.
Full screen.
Hello.
Oh, full screen.
Sorry. Yeah, so that's several of the idea of what exactly is Buku Jalanan. So I hope actually it answers of some of the question, or actually like bringing more question which we can actually discuss more further later. So yeah, as to further contextualize where Buku Jalanan is, I guess it's quite important because of course we don't happens in vacuum. We must interact. We must actually develop our own idea or our own sense of how can we actually situate ourselves in the social political realm that we experiencing in Malaysia. So just to go further back, like of course we don't start in the 1998 because I was just 8 years old at that time. So we don't really become politicized at that time. But just to contextualize on how are we actually like, it brings our, the politicization moment. Like, because maybe among the Malays in Malaysia, the politicized moment or we become politicized is when we actually got to know about what really happens in the Reformasi movement in 1998. So Reformasi movement is when our former Prime Minister, which is currently the Prime Minister, Mahathir Mohamad, he actually sacked our former Deputy Prime Minister, but now the Deputy Prime Minister is vying for, or maybe in 2 years' time, he's going to be the Prime Minister. So it's that complicated in that sense, of which we can talk more about it later. You can understand it? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of circle, of which we're going to talk more about it.
Recycle and reuse.
Yeah, recycle and reuse. We practice recycle, reuse, reduce a lot in Malaysia.
The retirement project from Malaysian or elder people.
Yeah. So yeah, moving forward from there, like of course, we are also parts of the generation of 2008, where during the 12th Malaysian general elections, that's the first time that the incumbent at that time, Barisan Nasional, has been denied the 2/3 majority in the parliament. So it sends something. It's actually like give us some kind of imagination that it is actually possible for us to do something. So from then, of course, it's not only like what really happens in Malaysia per se, but we also been connected with different social movement around the world at that time, such as the Arab Spring, which actually starts in Tunisia, and then the Occupy movement that happens around the world at that time. And one of the earliest Occupy movement is actually in KL, Kuala Lumpur at that time. And of course the Indignados movement in Spain. And that's when Buku Jalanan started as well. Of course, it's really hard to say that we are being influenced by this particular movement, but it actually plays a role on how are we going to develop our own tactics or our own strategy or our own approach in order to understand or to conceptualize the social movement in Malaysia. But then in 2013, we have another 13 Malaysian general election. Of course, the opposition getting more seat, but at the same time, they don't form the government yet. So hence, 2018 actually provide that trajectories where it is now, we actually have, after 61 years, a new government in town by Pakatan Harapan. So, but at the same time, it's also very important to see the wave of knowledge and cultural rhizomatics post 2008. I actually use the words rhizomatics because it's actually a multiplicity, hybridity, and connectivity and non-structured entities of several groups actually, because it's very much different from the conventional social movement or the structure that we have prior to that. Like maybe in 1998, it's much more like a traditional social movement like NGO, trade unions and all. But then after 2008, I see there is a lot of different like non-social movement. I'm quoting it from an article by Asef Bayet. He's a scholar focusing on social movement, but he actually comes with a term of non-social movement, of which I believe that although we don't actually or indirectly position ourselves as non-social non-movement, but then maybe it actually captures certain aspect of it, of which I'm going to talk more later. So this is some of the historical timeline of which I found important for us to understand the development in Malaysian political condition. Yeah. So moving forwards now, like at the end of the parts in the video that we shows, the last time is actually 90 chapters, but now in the year of 2018 there are actually more than 91 chapters of Buku Jalanan, sporadically formed in different geographical and demographical spheres. So because it's quite interesting to see how Buku Jalanan actually becoming sporadic in Malaysia, because usually the movement, the social movement is going to happens only in Kuala Lumpur, but then with Buku Jalanan you can see the people from different part of Malaysia, like in the Borneo or even in the rural area in Pahang and also in Kelantan, actually develop or starts their own chapter of Buku Jalanan. So, and another thing is that the demographical sphere is also very important, because it shows that it's no longer the demobilizing or the people who actually starts Buku Jalanan is no longer the traditional people who actually engage with politics, like politicians or trade unionists or activists, but they are coming from different group of people, like people who really likes to read, because that's our main core activities, actually reading. So people who actually reads, maybe they think like, oh, this is like a very good idea, we can come together and we can set up like a library together. So it's not really political in that sense, but the ideas of reading together in a public space as a collective is sending a very strong message, actually, like coming together as a collective, as a community together. So this is one of the most important things that actually emerged from Buku Jalanan activities. But then at the same time, after 2008, the 12th general election that I mentioned earlier on, like we also have to rethink what kind of political participation are we going to delve with, are we going to involve with in Malaysia, because usually people will just go to the conventional way of political organization, like, oh, we should join political party. But then, how about the people who actually want to remain independent, who want to remain autonomous and still becoming political? So from here, we, of course, the networks of social cultural ecosystem has always been there. But through Buku Jalanan, we actually encourage more participation from different people, like independent literary circle, because at that time, there is an emergence of Malay indie publication, Malay independent publication, where people no longer just produce publication through, how to say, like a state-funded institute like Dewan Bahasa and Pustaka, which loosely translated as the House of Language and Literature. And then, yeah, so they actually produce their own design, their own magazine, and their own publication. Then after that, we also have communities, organizers, and artists collective coming and building and starting their own chapter of Buku Jalanan. For example, the artist collective, like in Sandakan, in Sabah, maybe I'm just going to put it in Sabah, like there is one artist collective called Pangrok Sulap, who actually focusing on the woodcut. They're actually working closely with our friends in Buku Jalanan, Sandakan or Ranau, if I'm not mistaken. So it shows the networks that happens afterwards. But then, about the ideas of participation, we also try to conceptualize a new ways of participating. Like, is it possible for us to propose an alternative education, like our friends in Buku Jalanan Chowket, who actually now runs a proper school and actually developing their own syllabus in order to cater and to work together with the community at risk. Because in Chowket is a space in Kuala Lumpur, in middle of Kuala Lumpur, where there's a lot of migrant workers community there, and also the stateless community there. So our friends in Buku Jalanan Chowket actually working on developing their own alternative education. And of course, we are using workshops, guerrilla exhibition, assembly discussion, publication, and of course our main core idea, which is the street library. But then again, just to contextualize it further, it's all about space, because space has always been it has always been politicized in Malaysia. Like, for example, like in this because this is now a fasting month in Malaysia, so you cannot eat in the public space. You can get caught by the religious authority if you happen to eat in the public space in Malaysia. But then again, with negotiating spaces, in Buku Jalanan context, is try to bring a new specialization, imagination, like, oh, they are doing library in the public space. Why do you want to make a library in a public space? It's not really conducive for the people. It's loud. It's not comfortable for most people. But then why? And even some of the Buku Jalanan actually do it in front of the university's library in Malaysia, like in Buku Jalanan UKM, just to start a conversation because of the dysfunctionality of the library system in the university. So that's how we actually try to negotiate, actually to confront the ideas. But just to talk more about UITM, so I did mention this is where my alma mater, my previous university, like Mara University Technology, where in UITM, if you are a Malay like me, you can enter the university. But if you're ethnically Malaysian Chinese or Malaysian Indian, you have to forget to enter this university because it's only been reserved for the indigenous in Malaysia. So this is how it was being founded. But at the same time, it's very interesting to see why Buku Jalanan or why people like me, like the student in UiTM actually wants to start Buku Jalanan. It's because of the AUKU. So AUKU is actually a repressive legislation framework in Malaysia. AUKU stand for Akta University College University. So University and University College Act, where in one of the act or subsection of it, they mentioned that the Malaysian students, the university students are not allowed to participate in politics. So by doing Buku Jalanan, actually, we try to negotiate the space. Like, we cannot involve in politics, but what if we actually did a library? Is it like a political action? Is the book that we read in the public space is political? So from there, like, book as a neutral, neutral tools can be politicized. So this is the way that we actually try to negotiate with the space, with the tools, or even with the dominant ideas in Malaysia. So from here, starting from a students' movement, but then again, how do they actually capture a larger, broader part of the society? Because are we going to just limit ourselves as students' movements, or are we going to go directly to the society and bring in together in order for them to understand what we really do, for example? So yeah, moving forward from there, like in 2015, this is actually a very interesting ideas, because when we first started in 2011, 2013, like the peak of Buku Jalanan, there's a lot of university students who actually take the same tactics, takes the same form of activities in their own place. But in 2015, there is a leaked document published by the National Civic Bureau. So the National Civic Bureau is actually a government body directly with the Prime Minister office. So they're actually focusing on brainwashing the community. Like, this is Malaysia, what Malaysia should be. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. So there's a lot of complaint. Even until now, like with the new government right now, they're going to actually abolish the BTN, the National Civic Bureau, because of that. So in 2015, there is a leaked document by this organization, where they actually identify several groups leading an anti-establishment movement with the focus on influencing the upcoming 14th Malaysian general election. And one of the groups is actually Buku Jalanan, and also several other people. Like, actually, one of the individuals that has been identified is myself. So yeah, they say that I'm proposing like an anti-establishment influence for the upcoming 14th Malaysian general election. But then again, you can see from several of the snapshot of the news, you can see the keywords of, they're propagating dangerous ideas, anti-establishment, Malay counterculture, indie arts, like I mentioned about the indie publication, and the notion of we have to protect that the religions, race, and the state, nation state. And of course, with emphasizing that, this is the elements that we have to protect, which is the Malay, the UMNO, the former political party, the United Malay National Organization, and the Bumiputra, the son of the soil, the indigenous. So we have to protect these groups. Tanah Air, Tanah Air, yeah. So from here, this is some of the idea that the government want to retain or want to protect. They don't want it to become being contaminated by these so-called anti-establishment groups. So moving further from that, like just to summarize the conversation that we have today is that where are we? Like, how do I understand myself, or how do we understand ourselves when we actually do different kind of project? Then, like, so for me personally, I'm thinking of my own positionality. So I'm actually representing the dominant spectrum of the 4 M's in Malaysia. The 4 M's is actually being written by Farish Anwar in one of his essay. He's a historian in Singapore before, but now I don't know where he is.
NTU.
He's still in NTU, right? Yeah. So the 4 M's in Malaysia is the Malay, which is me, and also Muslim, which is me, and middle class, which is me, and also a male, which is me. So I'm actually representing the whole spectrum of the dominant ideas of what a citizen should be in Malaysia. But then through my own practices, I try to retain my own positionality. How can I actually putting myself as a minority, for example, like studying here, like how can I becoming more vulnerable, of which moving forward to the second one, like cultural vulnerabilities, like in terms of the language, because I'm still learning Chinese. In terms of the custom, for sure it's totally different custom. Like the Chinese custom is not the same like the Malay one, but at the same time, I don't want to put cultural vulnerabilities, or I don't want to actually to romanticize it, the cultural vulnerabilities, because in our current world, there's a lot more people who are actually really vulnerable, like the refugee or the migrant workers. But actually, in my own spectrum, like I still the dominant in that sense, but I'm negotiating my own positionality and vulnerabilities. But it's actually influenced my sensitivity, because with my own ideas of vulnerabilities, then I actually develop my own sense of sensitivity. Like, what if I am in that particular position? Am I going to do what they are going to do? For example, like how am I going to influence or being influenced by different political tendency, for example? So this is all about it. But then, from my own positionality, my vulnerabilities comes to the idea of translation. So the translation that I capture here is not the linguistic translation or the cultural the language translation from Malay to Chinese. No, but it's cultural translation, because for me it's always about, like, for example, here right now, it's all about translating. Like, how can you position yourself? How can you portray or represent yourself? For me, it's all about translating, and it does actually capture my imagination or conceptualization of my own practices, like as the one who actually being translated, for example, or the one who are translating. Is the process going to add more value to it, or going to reduce it? So this is something that I have to negotiate from time to time, and it's actually inform my own practices, because for me, meaning is no longer definite and complete, but always in motion, flowing like how a culture should be. So yeah, maybe of this I would love to actually to end my presentation, and I hope that we actually have a fruitful engagement afterwards. Thank you so much for listening. So this is some of the picture. Like, This is actually in Sabah. This is in Buku Jalanan Chowket, where they actually engage with the stateless and homeless people. And this is actually a collaboration with Buku Jalanan Chowket and a university in Taiwan, Tamkang University, with their architecture department. So they're actually building a mobile library with us. And then this is some of the class that we did. And this is during the May Day protest. And yeah, this is membaca budaya pembebasan is like reading as an act of liberation. So we actually just put it like in one of the part that we did Buku Jalanan before. Yeah. So yeah, it's actually official, but we just
cover it up.
Yeah, we covered it up and we just left it for almost a week. Yeah. Because it's so here you can see pemberitahuan and notice. Yeah.
Cultural jam.
Yeah, culture jamming. Yeah. That's what we call culture jamming. Yeah. So yeah, this is we just did whatever we want to do. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right.
So okay, last question or discussion.
Yeah.
Pass the mic. Yeah.
Can I just don't?
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. My question is, as I was thinking of the possibility to do such things in mainland China, because but the situation is totally different because although you mentioned that you and or the Buku Jalanan is on the list from the government, but I wonder if the police will go to interrupt your activities. Did it happen before, or how do you cope with them? Yeah, because from the pictures we can see you are gathering in the park or in the street. But for me, I will imagine that if we do such things in China, and after about half an hour, then the police will come and to interrupt or stop our activity. So in China, if some citizens want to do such a gathering, they will choose a coffee shop or a bookstore, a real bookstore, not on the street. So if you can share more experience about your experience with the police or the government, then it would be helpful for us to think of the possibility to do in China. Yeah, thanks.
It doesn't work.
That one works.
This one works. Hello. Oh yeah. So yeah, to answer the question, thank you so much for asking. Like, I guess for sure is the police actually in several Buku Jalanan. For example, within the university itself, because we actually have our own police in the university, so they actually have a power because most Buku Jalanan, mostly like all of Buku Jalanan actually is unregistered entities, unregistered organization. So for them, for the authority, it's easier for them to identify it as an unregistered body or unregistered organization. So usually they can just come and actually take away the book. So it happens several times in different part of Buku Jalanan. Like in one of it is in Buku Jalanan in Kuching, in Borneo part, in Sarawak, where the local authority actually come over and just take the books away. So this is some of the thing that happens. It happens, but in Buku Jalanan, inshallah, maybe because it happens in a urban area, so the local authority is much more, how to say, not really they accommodate, because the thing with Buku Jalanan is that the authority don't really know how to handle it, like because they're just a bunch of kids who want to encourage people to read. It's not a harms, right? So it's for them. It's like, how can we, how can we negotiate with them? Like, how can we, discuss with this kind of phenomena? Because it's not in their books. Like, we have to arrest the people who are reading. It's so absurd, right? To arrest people who are reading. So for them, for most of the people in the urban, like the local authority in the urban area, they don't really know how to deal with us. But in the rural area, they just come and take away their books And also in one of the incident that happens in Buku Jalanan, Port Dickson, it's like maybe 150 kilometers, 120 kilometers away from Kuala Lumpur. So it's not really that far from the city center. But the ideas of discussion, because one of the discussion that happens in Buku Jalanan, Port Dickson is actually about the religious issues between the Sunni and Shia. It's like two different Islamic school of thought. So it's still a taboo to discuss about those kind of things. So actually the people who actually come over is not the police, but the religious authority and also the local political party member, the UMNO, the United Malay National Organization party member, who actually comes and just say that, oh, you cannot discuss about this thing. This is totally against the rules of the state, for example. So it happens, but then along the way, we just try to develop our own tactics, because once they just take away the books, for example, we're just going to move. We're still going to maintain our space, but we're just going to just do it. So yeah, I guess maybe it's, of course, the operation is much more different. It's much more harsher, I guess, in China. Like you can be totally like suddenly you are lost or something, like they can make you lost or something, right? But then maybe in Malaysia, they don't really know how to negotiate, but the operation actually still happen. Maybe just to discuss it further in a different ideas is that people actually policing themselves. For example, there is this one book by, actually we have a banned book festival as well, banned book reading material. So we just share in the public space. So people can say, oh, this is like a banned book in Malaysia. Why should you put it here? You are not allowed to do that. You can actually get fined because you actually bringing banned books. But then there is this one time around, we actually share with the public a memoir by Shamsiah Fakih, one of the Communist Party of Malaya. She's a freedom fighter in Malaysia. So we actually shared in the library a memoir by her. So people actually asking like, hey, you should not have this kind of book in the public space. But interestingly, it's actually been published by a university print publisher, by UKM, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaya. So it's a university publishing prize. So it's widely available in the bookshop. But then again, it comes to the politics of the book itself. Like when you actually bring the book to the public space, it brings greater meanings to it. So maybe that's where the line is. Like if it's just reading in a public space, in a private space, or book in your own library, it brings nothing. But once you bring it to the outside, like it sparks a dialogue. Like people will question it. But of course, it's our duty as well to just have a dialogue about it. Yeah. So maybe that's the way we negotiate about it. Yeah. All right.
Just now you say about the Communist Party， 他说什么？三山，
Fuck you。
我不知道是谁。
Communist Party of Malaya。
有中文名不是？他是马来人。
他就是那个对。
哦，
那个马来人的那个。
哦 ，it's okay，it's okay。he's a Malay。she's Malay。应敏清啊，不是啊，应敏清 she had a Chinese name.
Yes.
I read her memoir in Chinese before.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, all in Chinese. Yeah, it's Chinese.
That one.
Yeah, okay. Because I don't know she Chinese name, but I still don't know that why UiTM is I think that is a conservative campus. How they educate you and how to make you become progressive or critical. I still don't know that how do they educate you, because like me, I'm a Chinese school student. They always say that you must protect the culture, our culture. You must go to have a donation to build the independent school because the Malay government. Okay, I think that they think still that the government is the Malay. They will destroy our education. Yeah. So how they educate you and make you like this?
Like this.
Like this.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah. I guess it's a good question actually, because of course UiTM being a conservative institution, because it's only been reserved for the Malays, the indigenous, but at the same time, we also have to position itself as one of the earliest foundation or university or education organization that actually allows the Malay to have an access towards a tertiary education. So in a way, they actually have that liberal views of like very limited. I'm not going to to defend them for sure. They are still very much conservative. But in several schools, like the law school, they are very much open with the interpretation. They are very much engaged with the constitution dialogue, for example, within their own law school. So I actually being influenced by that, like several of my friends actually from the law school. So I will go there in order to discuss further in the school, or even if actually they have their forum, for example, like this, like a small circle discussion group. So I will attend in order to understand it further. But just to share my experience further, for sure, most of the time, my exposure to the political situation is not within the university. It actually happens outside. Like I guess it's everyone else, right? We cannot really rely on the institution to get the political.
No, my college have some. My lecturer some. Not in Taiwan. I mean in Malaysia. Some of my lecturer is critical, like Discopy, the Ken, also my Malaysian studies teacher. The first class is the Manifesto of Communists. I also don't know why. When I attend, I want to skip the class. Then after that, when I attend my first class, then when I get the notes, then why this is a Manifesto of Communists? What is this? Then the teacher continues to say that, do you know why is it history? History is a class struggle. Repeat again. Why is history? History is class struggle. Then why is history?
So just to answer your question is that maybe it's because of the situation, like during the 12 Malaysian general election and after that, where there's a lot of Bersih movement at that time. So most of us actually, like maybe within the circle, like that's when we actually first directly engage with the political exposure, like Bersih. Although doesn't necessarily we believe in the same demand that they want, for example, like about electoral democracy, blah blah blah, because we want to go and to move beyond that. But Bersih actually provide us with the much needed political engagement in Malaysia, because it has been a vacuum for a very long time. But after 2008, at least for most of the younger generation, like maybe in our generation, like the Gen Y or 90s, born after 90s, like, oh, this is like a good place. Like even Bersih actually provide us with multi-ethnic political engagement, because that's the first time actually we had a political rally with different races. It actually provides those space. Although it's still, still we are going to rally like, oh, this is Malay crowd or Chinese crowd, but they are there. So it's a political statement of space, like, oh, there are a lot of people actually want to engage with the same demand like us. So why don't we actually join with us? So even for my own personal experience after the Bersih 4 and Bersih 5, even Bersih 3, we actually like having a lot of activities together with different groups of different ethnic group actually. Like maybe we can do like a discussion during Bersih rally. Maybe we're going to do like they call it, there's a certain like a discussion group, Occupy Bersih. So we did a lot of things like that together with different people from different discourse group. So for me, it's all about to go beyond the university. The university don't really provide us with anything. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah, it's
I won't catch up by using my phone.
this. Okay, so you was told us that you was born from very hegemonic environment, and then with the how you say the university that really hegemonic with monoculture, we should say, with the Malay culture and Islamic culture, and at some way you say that you can go out of this culture, and then when in this sense you become exclusive, and then to become exclusive, the person need to build the wall to maintain their exclusivity, and then from different perspective, you actually become excluded from your monoculture, and then you build your wall with people who have the same idea with you, but for the monoculture society, you are become rebellious, and then you are excluded from the people. How you maintain your relationship with this? I mean, the monoculture societies will need to back to their background.
Yes.
How you maintain this? Maybe to be clear, like how the people who have like imagination of Islamists, how you build your relationship? Yeah, because it's just I should say not impossible to go out from there, but it's good to maintain the stability from both sides.
But you make a relationship with who? Like family or classmate?
The society.
The societies, yeah. Monoculture societies. Because when he become exclusive, he crossing the boundary. But then when he crossing the boundary, he build the boundary again.
Yes.
Yeah. But and then he need to maintain the relationship within the new boundary that he built with the previous boundary where he was coming from.
It's really hard question actually, because how to say, of course we are coming from I am personally coming from that hegemonic standpoint, like becoming the 4 M's that I mentioned earlier on, like Malay, blah blah blah. But then at the same time, how are we going to maintain the position? Because for us, the most important thing is to provide that transgressive space. Like how can we actually negotiate those kind of space, and it's not really a matter of being accepted again to the hegemonic standpoint. I guess that is very important. But at the same time, if we're going to talk about how are we going to link with the former hegemonic standpoint, like conservative Islamists or the nationalists, Malay nationalists, for example, how are we going to bridge ourselves, right? That's, I guess, the most important thing about Buku Jalanan, where we really focusing on using the Malay language as the medium of discussion. I guess maybe that's where the ruptures happens, because when we actually use Malay language, because Malay language in Malaysia especially, of course, it's a national language, but people won't talk about a critical idea by using Malay language. Most of the publication about philosophy or sociology is in English. So we consciously choose to use Malay language in that sense. And when we actually try to relate ourselves with the people, with the hegemonic standpoint, by using their own tools actually. Of course, I don't really believe by using the same language or the same tool to dismantle the oppressor. I don't really believe that. It doesn't work that way. But how can we, within our limitation of engaging or confronting with the hegemony, like for example in UiTM, it's almost impossible for you to go confront themselves directly, because it's a large institution. They can just like, how to say, buang you dari university, like
Expel.
they're just going to expel you from the university, like what happened in several
Auku,
for our friends, because of Auku, for example, because of the college university that I mentioned earlier on, like the repressive University College Act that we have, that actually discouraged the Malaysian student to become involved in politics. So as an institution they can just expel you. But coming back to your question about by using the language is one way that we actually broaden up that fissures, that ruptures, and to democratize the border. I guess the ideas of border, because you mentioned about how are we going to link with different people, but the problem is the wall. I guess the idea consciously is to democratize the border. Let people see that, oh, it's not really a border, it's not really a wall actually. It's just an illusion. Like these people, they talk about this kind of thing, but still they are Muslims, but they just want to understand it further, this kind of thing. So I guess that's the most important thing by really using languages, because language has always been political in Malaysia. So if we're going to use the Malay language as a language of discourse, language of criticality, or language of dissent, so it shows something. Of course, people will say that, oh, this is not the language should be, for example, but still we're going to maintain that, so that people will and help our process to democratize the border further. Yeah, but I guess it's something that I still want to understand it further as well. Like, yeah, maybe any other people can like share as well.
I try to make it from different explanation. Like, from people from monoculture societies, successfully out of this environment, out of this circle, and become the progressive. He become exclusive, and when he become exclusive, he need to build the wall or boundary within his circle, so he will not drown anymore to his previous environment. And then he become progressive, and then his mission is to bring the people that left behind to be progressive as himself or as herself. But this is one of the I found like really difficult. Like for example, like the acceptance of the LGBT, right? So when we back to our societies where people cannot accept the idea of LGBT, will not accept us as part of the community, right? Because maybe they consider us have been contaminated. So this is one of the challenge, I think, in the term of the progressivism with the monoculture society. I just want to figure out your experience from the monoculture to be progressive, and then back to bring the monoculture to become progressive.
That's of course it's a good question. But then again just to extrapolate further, because if we're going to position ourselves as a social movement, for example, or social non-movement, we don't really have to, not kowtow, but to accommodate those kind of discussion. I guess the reason why we position ourselves as a social movement or non-social movement is to really to transgress those borders. So we don't have to be as populist as like a political party or a religious institution, So for us, it's always just to expand. That's how we should be. We don't have to limit ourselves like this is the end, like after we achieve LGBT and that's it. Because for me, the politics that happens or emerge must be the politics of dissensus. Like we must have continuous dissensus, not consensus. Because for a very long time, we understand democracy in an electoral democracy, like we must achieve consensus and then maintaining the harmonious society. But maybe in our position, we really have to transgress those boundaries. Like, it's not going to be not to be accepted by the larger society. But for me, history will judge us in that sense. Like for a very long time, like this kind of question, like LGBT, or the question even in Malaysia right now with the question of the indigenous right, the Malay rights. You cannot question Malay rights, but it's not really given. It's always being given through the hegemonic standpoint just now. So our process has always been. Our processes must really put a further force to it. like to really question the hegemonic standpoint. Maybe that's what we should do, in our way, in our possible way. Yeah, maybe.
But I'm surprised that Auku also affect about in the UITM, because after 2012 I still remember that follow the Auku this AUKU, that's what they want for this one.
就是如果大学生在校园里面参与政治活动，就会被开除。
Yeah, about the politics. But the thing is that according to the law is about the political the party politics, not for the politics. It means that if you debate about some political issue but don't have party politics, they cannot to how do you charge you, yeah. But why they will just 干扰这种 yeah, disturb you, yeah. I still don't know, because according to the law they don't have that right. They because after 2012 after the UKM4 case, UKM4 is the 马来国民大学, they have the case is the political student go to the observe the election, then after that they charged by the Auku. Then the political student but they go to observe, then they charged by the law. That is a very But I still don't know. That is not about you don't discuss about why the UPNO like that. Because some like other student movements, they always discuss about the party politics. But you just discuss about politics, why they charge not charge, disturb you, yeah.
Because in order for you to become involved with certain things, like for example, because in UITM, my previous university, we are not under AUKU, we are under different act, 174 Act, which specifically to govern our university. So it's much more harsher in that way, although they actually still maintain several regulation like in AUKU, like the College University Act. But in UITM, specifically, they actually have a 174 Act. So,
What does it say?
174 is actually almost the same, but actually covers a lot about, like, for example, the question of the management of the university. So, how do they govern the university? Yeah.
But 174 Act is for the all university, like have the international, right? Because some the national university, some don't have the name in the international. Do you know what I mean? The UITM, it means the University Islam. No. Some
Institute.
Institute.
Sorry. Institute. No, not Islamic. No.
Because some universities have a name of international. They not include in the charge.
They are using AUKU.
Yeah, using AUKU.
But UITM using 174. But the reason why I want to emphasize on AUKU is because it's a general act that has been used in Malaysia. But then to answer your question about is there any particular section that mentioned that you cannot be involved with political party and all, but at the same time explicitly it's about political organization. So in a way the student must register themselves to become organized. So Buku Jalanan is not a registered body. So that's why they want to...
illegal.
In a way, illegal.
He thinking is
Yeah,
illegal.
they thinking lah.
It's really necessary to have AUKU in Malaysian universities.
Is it necessary?
Yeah.
It actually,
Is it regulated in the university? Is it regulated in the university law, or I find it's really absurd actually.
Yes.
I mean, with my experience
in
Indonesia, I find it really absurd to have the AUKU system. I mean,
some penalty is that you cannot borrow the book for library, or you cannot to into the exam. Something
maybe the larger context of AUKU is actually being formulated in the year 1974 after the student riot, after the student protest of what happens in
No, actually, it's 1971.
1971, earlier on.
Yeah. 74 is a Mahathir version. It's a
Yes, the updated version. Yeah. So 1971, 1974. Yeah. So the reason why they actually formulated or make it into a legal framework is because prior to 74, prior to 71, the student actually involved directly in campaigning for during the 1969 election, general election in Malaysia, and after that happens the 13 May riot in Malaysia. The 13 May riot, the ethnic conflict between Chinese and Malay in Malaysia. So after that, the government actually
the conflict,
ethnic conflict.
Ethnic conflict, yeah.
So that's when the government actually formulate AUKU in order to curtail or to to limit the participation of students in politics, because at that time the youth or the university students movement are really strong at that time, because in Malaysia it's quite recent that the student actually have an access towards tertiary education. It's the same thing like in with UITM as well. Before that it's a agriculture college before it's being upgraded to institute, but now it's a full university. And for UITM it's formerly only for the Malay even until now, but they really focus on the lower class, the peasant society, the farmers, the nelayan, the fisherman family. So that's the foundation, that's the focus of the government at that time. But during that time there's a lot of like social inequality in Malaysia, economic inequality. So the youth or the student actually becoming directly involved with politics at that time. So that's the reason why they want to introduce AUKU. But I guess in 2012 they already
some
amendment to it, but then the spirit is still there. But then again the question is like, even if we don't have AUKU, is the student really want to get involved in politics then? You know, like post AUKU, like with the current government right now, like they want to abolish AUKU, but is the student wants to get involved with politics after we no longer have any limitation, no longer have any restriction to the participation. So the question, how can we actually involve more people in politics, political process in Malaysia?
The AUKU not only ban student into the party politics. Now can go enter the party enter the party, but cannot have a speech or talk in discussion in campus. Another thing is cannot enter the trade union. Yeah. Because that time the student movement also the government afraid the student movement and the worker movement together.
Maybe I misunderstood, right? But like the concept of politics inside the university or inside the educational institute, how they interpret the politic meaning?
Do you have a department of politics?
Okay, for example, maybe
I try to finish my question. Like we have like executive student council, right?
Yes.
To become the leader of the executive student council is part of the politics. How you organize the student to choose you become the leader is also part of the politics.
Yes.
But then political party is the political outside engaging the larger societies, and then expelling the politics discussion from the campus using the AUKU, it seems like absurd. The lecturer or the professor itself inside the campus to become the president of the university also become of the part of the politics. I really found the presence of the AUKU in the university.
Like me, I also in my campus I try to overthrow my principal.
So maybe to answer your question, it is really to that extent. Like for example, if you want to become an elected student council, the one who actually pick you is actually the Hal Ehwal Pelajar, the Student Administrative Council, which actually being governed by the University Council. So they are not independent bodies. So that's what happens after 74.
So there's no democracy inside the campus.
There is, but a guided democracy. Like, for example, if you want to become
Macam
the
Indonesia lah.
if you want to become the
Guided
if you want to become the elected representative, you cannot just say that, oh, I want to become an independent candidate. No, you must be chosen by the university.
So lead the butt of the leader lah.
It's like, how do you say, top down democracy. So the student doesn't have any independent body. So the best way is to really to mobilize outside of the university actually. So that's what happens with AUKU after 74 actually. Yeah, and afterward, like,
It's not that dissimilar from Indonesia before Suharto came down.
yeah, actually it's almost the
Kan?
same.
Yeah, sama.
I forget the year, but there are some like student organization before 45. So like Christian student movement,
Yes.
Islamic student movement, like Himpunan Mahasiswa Islam. The prominent leader of this organization usually become the parliament leader. Okay, now and before. But then because this organization really critical to Suharto, they call it naturalize the campus. So they excluded this organization, become the extra
parliamentary.
Extracurricular organization. It means like
yes,
they cannot be affiliated with the campus, but they can organize their activity inside the campus. So until now, before it was acknowledged as the body of the university, but and then after the naturalization, they cannot be the body of the university, but their activity exists inside the campus. They can borrow the school room facilities for their activities, but they are not part of the body of the universities.
Yes, yeah.
But
they
then
just become a student council.
Yeah.
Not student union, just
Yeah.
student council.
And then after this 98, a lot of political party underbond take similar form inside the university. So they can send their member or their cadet, their prominent member to become the student council.
Okay.
And in my previous university, several times it's like political party underbond member become the leader in the student council. After graduated from the university, they build their track
Base, yeah.
the base to be candidate in the parliament or something else. So
那是可以开的。
yeah.
就后面的解析。No, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, so I found like making the AUKU in the university in Malaysia seems really absurd. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Sorry.
It has something to do with maturity sometimes. You cannot expect everyone, when talk about politics, to be calm. You know, we are talking about it now, we are all calm, right? But at that age, when they're in university, they're still young. I'll say we are still young at that time. So you don't know what people will do. It has to do with a certain level of maturity and how they behave themselves. So people, when it comes to politics, sometimes they become so violent, angry. You know. So
But I think it's not about someone become violent, but understanding the politics, how we become critically understand our leader, what their intention to rule out us in this way. So the way we understand politics, actually, the way we become critical about our leader, is not actually we become anarchists or something else associated with the violence. Yeah.
I guess maybe just to extend in your point is that it's good to have that political exposure earlier on.
I agree.
Yeah. So, but then in what way are we going to organize? It's a different way altogether. Yeah. Because in Malaysia, like 18 years old, you can go to the club and you can like buy some cigarette and all, but you are not allowed to vote. 21 years old is the legal age to vote in Malaysia. So why do you need like 16, for example? because everything is now becoming more accessible in that sense. But the question is like, how can we develop the political maturity? Yeah, I guess it's the same. The argument by the government, like when they say that, the youth are not really mature to be involved in politics. So I guess that's in several times, like in Malaysia, or even in Indonesia, like the youth are not mature enough to be involved in politics. But mature for whom? Are they for them or for
open?
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess it's a question of that. Yeah. Yeah.
And something like state repression. Like from, let's try we compare from mainland China to Singapore and Malaysia. Can be they are in the same level? No.
That's the thing. It's like with the ideas of state repression.
I mean, let's talk about in the context of negotiating the space.
Yeah.
Negotiating the space or using the park or public space for your activity, for your organization activity.
Yeah.
Can be Singapore and Malaysia on the same level?
No. In Singapore, it's much more violence in that way. Yeah. Because even until now, if you actually read a news like last 2 weeks, like individual protests are not allowed. Like a single person protests are not allowed because anymore in Singapore. So, but that's the thing. It's like it's really hard to quantify or to compare violence in that sense because violence by the state has always mutated itself. Repression. Yeah. So the repression always mutates itself. It doesn't mean that you are being killed because if you're going to a protest, it means that the state is violence. It doesn't necessarily be like that. Even the non-structural violence is violence. Like people don't really, people are afraid to show themselves. It can be violence. Like subconsciously, I'm not going to be involved with this because I don't know. I'm afraid of my economic situation. If I involve with this, there is violence in that sense. So it's really hard to quantify or to understand violence in violence logic or repression logic, of which we are using right now. Like if there is people die, there is violence. But if there is no people die, there is not violence. You know. So violence by the state has always been violence for me, like a repression.
Let's talk about the visible violence.
Yeah.
As he say, like
in China,
you gather like 10 people and then with like public discussion in the.
I want to add more. That because in China, the public space is not so strictly impossible for people because as he may know that in China many old women they have danced together in the park and the police will not interrupt them but I still want to know the comparison between what are you reading about? Maybe the books of novels or just some safe books, or your actually discuss some political issues. Because it depends. If you just read normal books and it's okay, and police will not come. But but I think when you say about political, you must say that reading is just intermediate for people to discuss together. Yes. So the discussion is more important, but I don't know what you are discussing about. Like if there are some political issues or some news happened in Malaysia, and will you talk about it? Yes, something like that.
So coming back to the principles, this is actually a principle that we developed because for Buku Jalanan chapter, we actually have several symposium, like where we are going to invite different Buku Jalanan chapters to come and to discuss about what should we do in the next 5 years, what should we do in the next year, for example. So when we first did Buku Jalanan symposium, where this is in 2014 or 13 if I'm not mistaken, so we come up with like a manual on how to do your own Buku Jalanan. So this is the principle that we believe in, like that we agreed on actually. Like what kind of books are we going to read? Like for us it's books for all and all kinds of books. There's no discrimination in that sense. And what kind of discussion are we going to discuss to help in the public space? So for us, it's always been derived from the act of baca, the books, art, culture, and activism. So we're going to discuss everything that is within these particular topics. So and also we really focus on using the public space as a knowledge and cultural space. So when you mentioned about, for example, in Malaysia there's a lot of issues about the Islamic law. For example, are we going to implement Islamic law? So I guess that's the most, like, how to say, quite a very popular topics in Buku Jalanan, because every year the issues will crop up, and again we have, like, in a way we discussing it again and again, because to address or to allow a different view about the implementation of Islamic law in Malaysia. So this space actually allow a more immediate discussion to happen, of which we don't have enough, especially like usually people will do it inside the university under a very formal condition, but then with Buku Jalanan it's always like just go to the public space and let's discuss it right away. Of course it's not really popular, like maybe during one Buku Jalanan we can have like 20 to 30 people, but mostly they are young and they are actively engaged with the society, so it brings something from there. Like maybe from 20 people they will talk with their friends, like 5 other friends, so maybe from there like it will become more sporadic, becoming more like a virus, like will contaminate each other. Yeah, so that's how we actually use the idea of Buku Jalanan. Yeah, even for some of the people who actually comes here, when they actually first come to Buku Jalanan, and then they're going to meet with other people from their own space, and they said, oh, you are from here, why don't we just do our Buku Jalanan together? So most of Buku Jalanan actually starts like that, like a group of people like meeting in Shala, and then we are from the same area, Kepong let's go lah, do a Buku Jalanan in some of the place in their own district. So yeah.
Last question 你有拿问吗？
May I have a question? Okay, and I have a question about today's theme from
Kuala Lumpur.
Kuala Lumpur to Hsinchu, and I want to know your practice in Hsinchu and how do you think of your life in Hsinchu? Yeah.
Or you are a Muslim?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, in Taiwan, no, how can you survive?
It's not really a problem, like to eat and all. It's not really a problem. They have a larger problem to eat, like
It's not the problem as long as you don't tell him what's inside the food.
yeah. So if I don't know what's inside the food, it's okay. No. But coming back to your question, like how's life in Hsinchu?
Yeah.
I'm afraid the people from Hsinchu will like beat me after I say that, but it's boring there in Hsinchu. But then it's a good place to study. Yeah, because you don't have any other things to do, so you just go to the study room and like really study. But that's why I actually come here during the weekend. At least I can do something.
Try to find a work.
A work?
可见。
Oh, work. Oh yeah, I work part time in the university under the institute as a researcher. So yeah, I work in one of the projects there. Yeah. And about my project in Hsinchu, like with Stranger Cooperation, because I didn't mention about the project that we do together, like the Stranger Cooperation. So this is actually one of the project that one of our mutual friends actually. Nini, so she actually have a space in Hsinchu market. So yeah, so we come up with the idea of like, maybe we can do some documentary screening, and focusing specifically on Southeast Asia, because most of the friends are actually from there. But then we are not really like regional centric, like only Southeast Asia, but we actually want to have more discussion actually. So we are using documentary film screening as a means or medium to have a discussion. Yeah, so yeah. Alright.
Okay, that's all. Yeah.
Oh, that's all.
Yeah. Sure.
Hello. Just one last question, Zikri. going back to your timeline. Yeah, the timeline, right? Yeah, this one. So it's quite significant that it starts in 1998 with the Reformasi, and here I suppose you mean the Malaysian Reformasi movement. But at the very, very beginning, you were talking about how you're also influenced by what's happened in Indonesia, the Indonesian social movement and all that. Of course, with 98, it's Reformasi, and you have a successful Reformasi with the downfall of Suharto. So I was just wondering, even though you're 8 at that time, right? But post Suharto, right? What influences would you say have or what influence have you felt coming from Indonesia? Yeah.
I guess for my own personal influence is that actually through cultural and arts practices of artist collective in Indonesia, like Taring Padi, some of the group that actually engaged directly with the people's movement there during post Suharto. Jogja-based group or Jakarta, and usually writers group as well, because Buku Jalanan in a way like we actually like share with people like Indonesian literature as well. So in that way, we don't necessarily influenced by that, but also by the culture and language intimacy. Like how are they going to organize, for example? So not necessarily in terms of the form, but also the content of the social movement in Indonesia.
So less on I suppose what happened after Suharto's fall from power. So more of the artistic side, less of the overt political trends, I suppose. Right. Okay. Just clarify. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have some conclusion or your school life in Taiwan? Maybe you can tell some because your
CTU is too boring to talk. And CTU is good. Advertisement.
Off record. Okay, so we just call it a night. So let's put our hands together and thank Zikri for sharing his experiences today.